I have no interest whatsoever in regular healthcare interactions. I go outside of the system and get my own blood tests done every 12 to 18 months or so.
Today we're listening to I Don't Go to the Doctor, I Buy My Own Blood Tests. This is Dr. Dans, an internal medicine physician, I believe from the UK. We also order blood tests, I suppose, for each other. We've talked about them publicly many times, but we do go to the doctor. So let's see what he has to say.
Hi everyone, Dr. Sunil Dand, internal medicine physician. Welcome to another video. Crucial blood tests to get. As I've said many times before, I have no interest whatsoever in regular healthcare interactions. I go outside of the system and get my own blood tests done every 12 to 18 months or so. And that really says something because since I arrived in the United States, I have excellent healthcare insurance and the blood tests would all be paid for. But what am I going to do? Get the blood test done and then sit down with a regular primary care doctor who barely has any time with me and is going through a tick box of questions to ask. They won't get to know me. They will mindlessly go through their protocol as they have to do really within our current system. And then they will want to throw all of their recommendations at me, including injections. No, thank you. I would rather think things through myself.
They're trying to put him on TRT injections.
Or maybe an antibiotic for that STD.
It's got to be TRT.
No, thank you.
But insurance doesn't cover testosterone and hormone labs.
Maybe,
I think he's mistaken.
Maybe he has a B12 deficiency.
If he got the same labs, a couple $100 worth, you can go to GillettHealth.com, click order labs, and get an extremely comprehensive panel that insurance is just not going to cover all those specialty labs, like a homocysteine, a lipoprotein (a).
Yeah, probably not, even though they very well would stand to benefit from covering those if they're playing the long game. But maybe insurance companies are planning for the days that Medicare for All comes around. So they're playing the actual long game.
Perhaps so. Or they just figure if they get accustomed to turning things down, then most people are not going to order them. And they don't want to cover the preventive care anyway.
Yeah. So it seems so far that we agree that there are some things that are suboptimal about the healthcare system.
Yes.
And be my own doctor. But of course, I understand that everybody doesn't have this advantage. I'm a physician myself, and I know what crucial blood tests to get every 12 to 18 months or so. And in countries like the United States and United Kingdom, it's very easy to order your own blood tests. You don't need a doctor's order. And I've used various companies in the United States, including Quest, but there are many facilities in most areas. And I get blood tests done every 12 to 18 months or so. Of course, everybody is different, but here are the blood tests that I routinely get.
So, first, what do you think as a physician about being your own physician? And then second, the cadence of getting blood work every 12 to 18 months.
I do not want to mechanic my own car, and I try to get blood work on myself at least every 6 months, but I am aiming for optimal health and not just preventive health. Every 12 months is reasonable for some individuals. If he's using Quest directly to order labs, he's paying at least 5 times as much as he would pay going. Again, we're not trying to promote our product, but if he ordered through us, maybe I should shoot him a message and let him know we could get him those $250 of labs for $100.
I wanted to share these with you in this video. Number one, the complete blood count, or CBC. I believe they still call it FBC in the United Kingdom. And this looks for crucial components in the blood, including hemoglobin, are your red blood cells at an adequate level, white cell count, which is a marker of infection or inflammation. It goes up if you have either of those. And also platelets, which are a crucial component of the blood involved in clotting. Number two, a CMP, a complete metabolic panel. This is different from a BMP, which is more basic and will only tell you the kidney function and the electrolytes, including sodium and potassium. But a complete metabolic panel also includes liver function tests. Very important to regularly get those checked. Also included in that are your protein levels and your calcium levels. Number three, HbA1c, or glycosylated.
Oh, so far we're actually perhaps 3 for 3 for insurance coverage. insurance would probably cover these first 3 labs he mentioned.
Yeah, with how slow he's going through these, I feel like the labs that he gets are, by our standards, going to be very rudimentary.
Glycosylated hemoglobin. This is a test for insulin resistance, prediabetes, and diabetes, and it gauges blood sugar levels over a 3-month period. Number 4, a fasting insulin level. Not many doctors will tell you this, but fasting insulin levels are just as, if not more important than glucose levels. So a fasting glucose level will be on your CMP blood test. By the way, these blood tests should be done first thing in the morning. Fasting, hopefully you already know that. And a fasting insulin level coupled with a fasting glucose level will enable the calculation of the HOMA-IR, which is a very important calculation for insulin resistance syndrome. We don't use it anywhere nearly enough, and I've made videos about this crucial blood test before. Number 5, a vitamin D level. Millions of people out there are walking around with suboptimal vitamin D levels. We all know that vitamin D is important for strong bones, but it is also extremely important for good metabolic and immune health. So a good idea to check a vitamin D, OHD level regularly, particularly if you live in the northern hemisphere. Number 6, an iron level. I'm a big fan of checking iron levels because many people out there, especially females, are iron deficient. They have iron deficiency anemia. Number 7, CRP levels, C-reactive protein.
A serum iron level?
I assume that he meant serum ferritin by that, which is affected by CRP, or perhaps he's about to say it. You want to get a ferritin. If your CRP is high, which he just mentioned, then your ferritin will be falsely high as it's an acute phase reactant. Platelets are also an acute phase reactant. If you're in an inflammatory state, for example, if you have the flu, then your ferritin, CRP, and platelets will all likely be very high.
Yeah, it's always a good idea to have those two. You wouldn't want to see just the ferritin in isolation by itself. Doesn't tell you a lot.
I've made videos about this before, but this is an excellent test. It's underutilized for detecting generalized inflammation within the body. There are specific forms of CRP, but a general C-reactive test is usually a good one to get to basically screen for underlying inflammation. People who have inflammatory disorders or an infection particularly will have elevated CRP. Number 8, a lipid panel, also known as a cholesterol blood test. I put this way down the list because I'm not a huge believer in the lipid cholesterol hypothesis. I believe we're way too aggressive at treating this, and we focus on band-aids and treating numbers rather than getting at the root cause of the problem. But nevertheless, it's still a good test.
Wait a second.
Post-PICS post-CCTA or no advice?
If you get plaque in an artery that comes from cholesterol, how does that cholesterol get transported into the wall of the artery?
It's a good question.
Lipoproteins?
Insulin, carbs, sugar. That's what it is. It's that darn sugar that just pushes that into the plaque wall. Yeah, it's an inflammation. It's platelet stickiness.
So he
It's inflammatory changes.
reluctantly does recommend a lipid panel.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable to take a balanced approach. This is a non-scientific way to think about it, but say you're multiplying your cardiac risk and you have a lipid score, an insulin resistance score, and an inflammation score. You can have a score of 1 to 10 in all of them, and you multiply them all together. So if you have a 5 inflammation and a 5 insulin resistance and a 10 lipid, that's going to be 250. 5 times 5 times 10. So having a 1 lipid score can help quite a bit if you're not sure what your baseline inflammatory status is over time.
Yeah, and one of the things I've noticed is that all these metrics he's mentioned so far, he's a big proponent of checking them. They're a great test. I've not heard someone make the claim, oh yes, you should optimize your insulin sensitivity and A1C. You should optimize your lipids, but C-reactive protein, you don't really need to worry about that. I'm not a big believer in or how about this example? I'm not a big believer in the glucose diabetes hypothesis.
Yeah. You can optimize everything, but if your A1C and glucose run high, there's no issue. I suppose to play devil's advocate, if your LDL is 132, but your ApoB is right at 90, and your fasting insulin is 2, your A1C is 4.8, and your CRP is consistently every 4 to 6 months 0.3, then perhaps the downsides of lipid-lowering therapy outweigh the upsides.
Yeah, it depends on everyone's level of risk tolerance or how proactive they want to be, whether they're open to imaging or not. We've done whole podcasts on this that we'll certainly link to, talking about clearly and plaque and all those sorts of things. Let's see what he has to say next.
To get, it should be fasting ideally, and the blood test will enable us to see what the total cholesterol is, the triglycerides, the LDL, low density, quote unquote, bad cholesterol, and HDL, the high density, good cholesterol. All of those will show up on this blood test. Number 9, thyroid function. Your thyroid gland is involved in a multitude of different bodily processes. And if your thyroid isn't working properly, that can manifest in a number of different ways. Starting off typically with a TSH blood test. That's the initial test for thyroid function, thyroid stimulating hormone. And if that is abnormal, then we do more tests, including T3 and T4 levels. Number 10, 2 other very important electrolytes to get are magnesium and phosphorus. A lot of people out there are walking around with low magnesium and low phosphorus levels. And in my opinion, it's a very good idea to get a baseline measurement to see what the numbers are and whether any supplementation is required. Number 11, testosterone levels. This is an important blood test for men of all ages to check, because for a number of reasons, testosterone levels are decreasing across the board, primarily due to the environment. A toxic food environment and also other environmental factors are leading to testosterone levels decreasing, and particularly if any man out there is having symptoms including lethargy, then testosterone is a good idea to check. So those are some blood tests that I consider very important to check. And of course, everybody is different. Some people may need other blood tests. Some people may need blood tests less frequently. Some people may need blood tests more frequently. But because so many people have asked me, when you go outside the system, what blood tests do you consider important? I wanted to share that video with you. Thanks everyone for watching. Feel free to comment.
Well, it's still a basic panel, I would say, but compared to what the average person gets in the traditional medical setting, the original sort of point of his video, I'd say that people would stand to improve. It's a little bit interesting. I think I've yet to see a low serum magnesium.
Yeah.
I've seen
RBC.
thousands of labs, and maybe he is referring to intracellular magnesium.
I have seen a few low serum or magnesiums.
Yeah.
But
Well, I do take that back. When I worked in the hospital setting as an RN, I definitely saw some low magnesium levels.
the
But
chronic
in the
hypokalemic patients.
outpatient setting,
Yeah.
I have not seen that.
Yeah, but he is absolutely correct. Most Americans do not consume enough magnesium in the diet. So it is something good to check and trend. Certainly high end of normal is where you want your serum magnesium. And if possible, your RBC magnesium as well. I love that he included testosterone. I would have been interested, just like people are interested in our personal medical history, what he has been able to presumably naturally optimize his testosterone level to. Or maybe that was one of the injections that people are trying to start him on. But he should have included a SHBG, which is sex hormone binding globulin. So he can also calculate a free testosterone, which his SHBG is probably higher because presumably he exercises and has a good whole food diet. Again, the highly processed food diet is what I think he was referring to in the environment, which is the cause of metabolic syndrome, which is the number one cause of low testosterone.
The biggest endocrine disruptor.
It is the biggest endocrine disruptor. So there's a lot of solid pieces of advice in this video. I really liked this much more than I expected to. Coming from an internal medicine physician, I don't know if he was a hospitalist. I love his accent. It reminds us of our friends Memo and Dave Lee from Australia, where they say HDL.
Vitamins.
Yes. Yep, and vitamins, yeah. So I really like this delivery and advice quite a bit.